The camera can see me okay? Ani, hello, Tansei Buju. Tansei Natotamek. Nanaskamo Nipawewin Wachi Esquil. Hello, everyone. I am Standing Mountain Woman. My given name is Arlise Lafreniere Watney. I am of the Battle River Cree people in Eagle Hills, Treaty 6 territory, also known as Red Pheasant Cree Nation in central Saskatchewan. So I am a long way from home. Truly honored to be here to welcome you guys to our open house for the Northern Road Link project. Before we begin, I would just love to acknowledge that Geraldton is built on the traditional territory of Ganugaming Nation, signatory to the Treaty 9. I also want to acknowledge the spirits of the land, our four-legged relations, the water, and I do want to acknowledge that all the other tribes and ancestors that have walked these lands for thousands upon thousands of years that also helped contribute to today's society. Hi to all of those. To give us a project overview. Kazim?
Thanks so much, Arlise, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. As Arlise said, my name is Qasim Sadiq. I'm the project co-lead along with Michael Fox. I'm the co-lead on behalf of Martin Falls First Nation, and the project, as most of you know, is led by the two nations of Martin Falls and Webakwe. And this road is really considered an economic development road for the two nations, going from the southern part, which starts right at Martin Falls, very close to Martin Falls, north of the Albany, and goes all the way up to the Ring of Fire. And the two nations came together basically to try and move this project forward for the primary purpose of enabling the development of their traditional territories economically, to create opportunities for the economy of their community, for social benefits that can accrue to the people of Martin Falls and Webakwe. And the long-term intent is to help develop projects along the corridor, primarily at the Ring of Fire as well. So today we've got a presentation to talk a little bit about where are we in the project. We are keen to hear from those who are attending and get feedback on the alternatives that are being described, your thoughts on the way the process is the process is considering collection of data and information and what's being considered through this environmental assessment. So look forward to the conversations this evening. And once again, thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Ange. Sorry, Ange, before I do that, I should also say this is of course a regular opportunity. We love coming into Geraldton and having these conversations, but outside of these conversations, we're all very easy to find. I am very easy to find. If you ever want to chat with any of us, with me, very happy to do that tonight or at any other point in the future as well. So please keep these channels of communication open. Ange, over to you.
All right, I'm just going to get rid of that microphone stand, as well as the product placement. Okay, thanks everybody. My name is Ange. Welcome to the Northern Road Link project update. All right, just as a little bit of background about the project, I know some of you here were here last year, but I'll just give you a really quick update. The Northern Road Link is a proposed all-season road in Northern Ontario in Treaty 9 territory. As Qasim mentioned, the proponents of the project are Martin Falls First Nation and Webakwe First Nation. And the project is subject to both the provincial environmental assessment as well as the federal impact assessment. And it's coordinated between both processes. Oops, I don't know what's going on there. So this is just a little schematic of the project team. As we mentioned, the project is led by the two First Nations, Martin Falls and Webequie. We work with those communities very closely. Part of working with the community, we also have a working group, which is made up of 2 members of Martin Falls and 2 members from Webequie. We also have our project co-leads, who is Qasim and Mike, and then the technical experts, which is us consultants. All right, this is just a map of where the Northern Road Link is. It's the center road, the hatch line. It's going to connect the Martin Falls Community Access Road, which is the southern one in purple, and then the Webequie Supply Road, which is the one that's further north in red. All right, like I said, this project is subject to the provincial and the federal environmental assessment process, and you may be wondering what exactly is an environmental assessment. So technically, an EA is a process that's used to predict, evaluate, and mitigate potential environmental effects of a project. The whole process supports planning and decision-making around that EA. And a large portion within the EA is engagement with rights holders and stakeholders, which is why we're here today as in our open house capacity. Things that we have to do as part of an EA are conduct baseline studies. And this is where everything happens in the field. Everything from groundwater, surface water monitoring studies, breeding birds, surveys, caribou. We have the caribou poster over there. We've done wolverine studies. You name it, we've been out in the field working on all of that stuff. Once we have all that information, we're able to take that and assess the project environment interactions, figure out what the effects of the project may be, and then identify mitigation measures. Once we've identified all the mitigation measures, what's left over after that can't be mitigated, those are called residual effects. And then from there, we do the cumulative effects assessment. And we'll be talking more about cumulative effects in the next couple of open houses once we get more into that stage of the project. This is just a diagram of our schedule. I know it's small and hard to see, but we started this project back in 2021. Right now we're basically in the center there in 2024, where we are still conducting field studies, IK studies. This is obviously open house 4, and we are working on the alternatives assessment, which is one of the main things that we're here to talk about today. And I'll talk more about that in a couple of slides. The other thing that we're here to talk about today is the study plans. I'll also get into that a little bit later. The provincial decision on the EA we're expecting to come in 2028, and then the federal decision will come early on in 2029. So we've got a few years yet to go on this project. This is a little schematic of the provincial environmental assessment process. We are in the EA portion of the project. We started out with the terms of reference and the notice of commencement, and in the that's taken us, up a few years, and we'll be in this stage for another couple of years while we're actually writing the EA document. This is the federal impact assessment process. It's not a heck of a lot different than the provincial process. We're also in the impact statement phase. All right, so to get into the alternatives assessment, first we have to look at the actual corridor and our corridor segments that we have. So let me first explain the corridor. It's 2 meters wide. So what you see on the map, these colorful segments are not 2 meters. Oh my God. 2 kilometers wide. Yeah, I was like, it's really tiny. It's for Legos. So 2 kilometer wide corridor. And we're trying to we're working through the alternatives assessment to pick a preferred corridor. So what you can see in this map, we have some what we're calling common segments, a couple of these down in the south, and then that one up in the north. Those are static, they don't change, and our alternatives are these ones and the two at the top. So there's various combinations the way, I don't know, I forget how many different combinations there are. 16 or 20 is sticking in my head. It doesn't matter, but this is just to give you an idea of the different corridor segments that we have. Now, the alternatives assessment itself, how we complete that process is we use various criteria to compare corridor alternatives to select the preferred corridor. And then once we have the corridor selected, we'll work down further into the further details, such as locations of construction camps, locations of sacred sites, or if there's sensitive habitat for a particular species, or this stream is too wide in this location, we need to move it slightly over to the east or west. That's when we get into the details of where we're actually going to place the right-of-way. If you look at a map, and I don't know if we have a detailed one here, but you can see right now we have right-of-way tracking through the corridor pretty much in the center line, but that does not necessarily mean that's where the right-of-way is going to land. All right, so at the moment we have completed a couple of runs of the model, and what I mean by that is we are carrying out a multi-factor analysis where we compare the advantages and disadvantages of each corridor alternative. The model itself is called Pangea, and it's powered by the data that we input into the model. And basically, when you get down to it, the model is only as good as the data that we input. So that's why we are running successive runs of the model as we get more and more detailed data. So like I said, 2 model runs have been completed to date, and we have some preliminary results, which we will see in just a minute. There's some terms that you use in an alternatives assessment. These are pretty technical. We've got a factor, which is a grouping of criteria with shared characteristics, such as the living environment. So this is where all the biological factors would sit. The criteria, it's an important consideration for the assessment. And then an indicator is just, it's a way to measure the criteria that allows for comparison. So I mentioned that the data I don't know if I mentioned that. The data has to be measurable. So it has to be either in an area, so hectares or square meters, or linear in nature. That's the kind of data that the model requires. It has to be mathematical. It can't just be something like somebody says, well, I prefer this area over here because the habitat is less sensitive. We have to have a way to measure that. We can't put that kind of data into the model. It doesn't recognize that sort of thing. So it's been challenging to try to get all the data into a measurable form. Now here's just an example of factors, criteria, and indicator. So I just pulled out Indigenous land use and interest. That's one of our factors. The criteria happens to be the exact same thing, Indigenous land use and interest. And a couple of the indicators, this isn't just all of them, it's just a couple of them. One is area of trap lines, and then areas of designated protected areas. So that's what I mean by it has to be measurable. Another factor is cultural heritage resources. Within that umbrella, we have archaeology sites and built heritage. So an indicator for archaeology is area of potential archaeological sites and registered or known archaeological sites such as burial sites or sacred sites. And under built heritage is just hectares of built heritage. That one's kind of basic. All right, so here are some of our preliminary results. Let me just put your eye to the map on the right, just to remind you, these are our actual alternative corridors. So, in general, the results. This one's kind of obvious. The longest route scores worse than the shorter routes, which just means the longer the route is going through the landscape means more impact on the landscape. So it's kind of obvious that that route is going to score the worst in any run of data that we do for any factor. All right, so this one, which is the longest route, scored worse for all factors. That one's also pretty obvious. Option 6, which is this route running up the Esker, it scored best for Indigenous land use and interest, physical environment, and technical considerations, which is basically all the engineering factors, the constructability. It has the best material, it's the driest, it's up on height of land. That's the obvious one of, like, that would be the preferred route from an engineering perspective. Option 3, this one, which is running mostly on the peat, there's a little bit of high ground over here, scored best for natural environment, which, when you think about it, that must mean that the Esker is more sensitive habitat than we have over here. Option 7, which is the one closest, almost at the far right, scored best for socioeconomic factors. And we had somebody ask about that, and that pretty much is the reason why is it's avoiding hunt camps, known fishing areas, known hunting areas. So you can see as of right now, we don't really have a preferred route. So this is why we have to do successive runs. And when we see that we don't have a preferred route coming up, that means we have to input additional data and refine it so that we start to find a preferred route. All right, so the other thing that we're here today to talk about is study plans. Now, study plans are reports. They're a requirement of the provincial EA process. And you're probably wondering, what the heck are these reports? Well, they are reports that present our proposed methods that we will use in the environmental assessment process. So that means it's going to have all of the information of how we will collect the baseline data, how we will analyze the data, how we will use predictive modeling to analyze all the data, because this project, the data analysis, most of it's going through a modeling process. And then these study plans also include a section on the effects assessment scoping for the EA document itself. We've prepared approximately 16 of the study plans for key valued components. I'll give you a little reminder about what VCs are in a second. And these draft study plans have been submitted to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, as well as the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. We're slowly getting comments on them. We're responding to the comments. And we're hoping to have all of these finalized before the Christmas break, and then they'll be put up on the website. Right now, we have study plan fact sheets on that table over there, so feel free to pick up all that literature, and then you can get a little bit more detail about what's included in these things. All right, so this slide is just a reminder of what our valued components are. So you're probably wondering, what is a VC? Well, a VC, I'll just read this off. Component of the environment identified as important and or sensitive to change, of concern or value for cultural and traditional purposes, and they are likely to interact with the project or project activities. We have 6 main umbrellas of VCs. We have Aboriginal treaty rights and interests, biological, physical, human health, cultural heritage, and socioeconomic environment. And we have a number of the VCs under the umbrella. And these are the topics of most of our study plans. Oops, skipped ahead, sorry. The other one that we wanted to talk about today, the other topic, was construction through peatlands, because we know this is an important one and everybody's concerned about it. So we don't want to avoid it. We want to start talking about it and the construction method that we're planning on using for this project once it gets past the EA stage. We understand that it's a significant area. It's sensitive on so many levels, and we want to make sure that we minimize the effects to the environment and other factors during construction. So what our engineering team is doing is looking to projects that they have completed in the past. One example is the East Side Road in Manitoba, the east side of Lake Winnipeg, from Manigatogan to Barons River. And we're planning on using the same construction approach that they did for that one. You may have heard us talk about it before on various live streams or radio shows or in a previous open house, where we talk about the floating road idea. And essentially what that is leaving the peat in place. So roads that are constructed here or further in southern Ontario, the engineers are used to doing cut and fill. We're not doing that here. What we want to do is minimize the impact to the groundwater network, because this is one gigantic interconnected wetland. It's not all a bunch of little wetlands. It's just one big massive system. So we want to make sure that we're not interrupting groundwater flow. And the idea is to place geotextile or geogrid on top of the peat and lay blast rock over top of that, and then lay cross culverts across the blast rock, just to ensure that there's no impediment to the groundwater movement. And then over top of that, we'll place layers and layers of successively smaller material until we get to the actual roadbed material. We have a model of the road right here, which is actually great to look at. If you haven't come up to see that, please do, because it gives you a better visual of what the road will look like on the landscape. And it even shows some little culverts. And also this board over here, construction. These are actual photos taken of the road, the east side of Lake Winnipeg Road in Manitoba. And it will take you stage by stage of how they build the road. And that's it for me on this part. I'm going to ask Michelle to come up, and then she's going to talk to you a bit about IK.
Thanks, Ange. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Nasir. I'm with Dillon Consulting. I'm one of the consulting teams that is working on this project, and I'm going to be talking about Aboriginal and or treaty rights and interests and the work that we're doing as part of the environmental and impact assessment process for this. So for this project, we're using an innovative approach that's based on the guiding principles that guide Martin Falls community, Martin Falls and Webekwe First Nation. And the idea is to undertake a two-phased approach in our Indigenous knowledge program that we've launched at the start of 2022. And the idea behind that is to encourage communities to share their information that they feel is important for us to know, whether it's information that they've already collected or our secondary approach which is to advise them to undertake project-specific studies that are relevant to the area and that can help give us information that they are willing to share on their cultural values and their Indigenous rights and interests in the area. What we also want to promote today is the fact that there is capacity funding support available for eligible communities to participate in the Indigenous Knowledge Program, and we're here all evening to chat about it. I'll be standing beside the boards out there and be available to speak to it a little bit and to encourage and promote uptake on our program. What I'd also like to give an update on is our study areas memo that was put out to the communities last year. We received feedback and we updated our study areas as a result, and that is available on poster boards out there as well as a map out here, and we're available at any point to chat about that aspect as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Angela and Kazim. That wraps up our presentation today. I do want to open the floor to any questions that anybody may have. I also want to acknowledge those that are watching on the live stream. If you do have questions, comments, concerns, feedback of any sort, please feel free to write those in the comments. We are watching that live. Do we have any questions in the room? Any questions through the live stream? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I just wanted to go over a few things as well. If you did want to see the presentation and take that home, we do have copies at the registration table there. Sorry, the presentation, not the registration. The comment forms are up there, and all the study plans that Angela mentioned are located on this table right here. And we do have a question here. 1 second. Hi.
Route alternatives and make a decision. How is that process made or done?
Sorry?
How is an alternative selected?
How is it selected?
Yeah.
Well, we have to look at, let me go back to that slide. We're going to be looking at all of the factors, everything under, let me show you. Well, it's going to be a combination of our subject matter experts and all the data that we have collected. We're also going to be using any of the IK that we have, and comments and concerns from the communities and other stakeholders that we get at venues like this, and then from live streams and radio shows. So we're taking all of that into consideration to come up with our preferred alternative.
So the consultants present that to the communities?
Yes. Yeah. So this is just our preliminary results, and then we're going to be inputting as we get more information coming in from places, things like this, and like I said, comments from radio shows and live streams, and any IK that's slowly trickling in, we add it into the model. And this is why like each run takes a while, because we have more and more data coming into us.
So do you sort of eliminate options and then narrow it down? Is it
That's exactly it. Yeah. And one thing I didn't mention in here, because it starts to get too much in the weeds, but we do have weighting attached to certain criteria. So they're not all weighted the same. Some certain criteria are more important, I guess, than others. I don't have that list in front of me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
But yeah, it just so you know, like not all criteria are equal.
okay. That's interesting too.
Yeah.
So like how would Indigenous knowledge be weighted?
Well, we don't actually weight it. It's not called, there isn't a criteria called Indigenous knowledge. It would be information we get from the communities, and it would be applied to all the criteria. So we'd get information on, for example, known moose areas, and we then calculate that down into square meters or hectares of area. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of information we have to put into the model. Or they will give us information about burial sites, and we have to take it as a square area, and we put that into the model.
So all your information is transferred into,
It's transferred into like a spatial data program,
right, okay.
and it's just tables and tables of information.
And I
Yes.
was going to say, and just for clarity, this is sort of the next
alternatives. So as the terms of reference was being developed, there were other routes, if you look back at this map, coming from Martin Falls into, like, it wasn't just that one corridor that comes up. They looked at multiple corridors from Martin Falls and different points off the MF car, and the community itself decided for various reasons to eliminate those options. And as Ange mentioned, there's sort of the technically best engineered option, I think 6.
Yes.
So that's, but from the community perspective, so the elders actually said, well, wait a minute, there's some concerns here. And they actually went through and worked with the consultants and said, no, here's a better site, here's a better site, here's a better site. So there was multiple sites and more information was collected. So it was a lot of leading of where you got the crossing of the Attawapskat was done by like Lawrence Baxter,
That's
Bob
right.
Baxter, the
Yeah.
community members. They know the area, they've grown up on that river system and grew up in the area. They're like, these are the better of those, of the crossing sites. Here's some other alternatives, engineering company in Atkins Realis to look at. So a lot of it came from the community of different options along the way. So that
Yeah,
helped
thanks,
out a
Paul.
lot.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's how it's evolved
Yeah.
to where it is now.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Ange and Paul. And that wraps up our open house. So we invite you guys to help yourselves to some food at the back table. There's some drinks there as well as desserts. And we will be sticking around to chit chat a little longer. Till 8 o'clock.